The A7V Sturmpanzerwagen, often simply referred to as the A7V, holds a special place in military history as the first German tank to be built and deployed in combat during the First World War, emerging directly as an answer to the British introduction of tanks in 1916, which had shocked the German High Command and demonstrated the potential of armored warfare on the static battlefields of the Western Front. Its development began late in the war, with the design finalized in 1917 and the first operational vehicles delivered to the front in early 1918. And while the project aimed to match or surpass Allied innovations, the A7V ended up being more of an experimental machine than a decisive battlefield weapon. The tank itself was a huge, steel-clad box resembling an armored fortress on tracks, weighing about 30 tons and built on a modified Holt tractor suspension system, powered by two 100-horsepower Daimler engines that worked together to give the tank a theoretical top speed of about 12 kilometers per hour on roads and around 6 kilometers per hour in rough terrain, though in practice it was often much slower, struggling in mud or shell-cratered ground, which was typical of the Western Front. Measuring 7.34 meters in length, 3 meters in width, and 3.3 meters in height, the A7V presented a large and cumbersome profile that made it highly visible to enemy gunners, while its short tracks and high center of gravity gave it poor stability and limited cross-country performance, often preventing it from crossing wide trenches or navigating uneven terrain as effectively as its British counterparts. Its armor protection, varying from 15 to 30 millimeters, was strong enough to resist rifle fire, shrapnel, and machine gun rounds, but it could be penetrated by artillery shells or even concentrated heavy machine gun fire at close range. In terms of armament, the A7V was formidable for its time, carrying a 57mm Maxim-Nordenfelt cannon mounted in the front plate, capable of destroying enemy fortifications and vehicles, supported by six 7.92mm MG-08 machine guns positioned on the sides and rear, giving it nearly all-around defensive firepower. This heavy armament made it one of the best-armed tanks of the First World War, but its effectiveness was reduced by the need for a very large crew, as it required at least 18 men, one commander, a driver, a mechanic, a gunner and loader for the main gun, plus multiple machine gun operators and assistants, making coordination extremely difficult in the cramped, hot, noisy, and poorly ventilated interior, where exhaust fumes and lack of visibility created exhausting conditions. Communication within the crew was primitive, relying on shouting over the deafening noise of the engines, which further reduced operational efficiency. Despite its shortcomings, the A7V was a symbol of German engineering ambition, though only 20 units were ever built, compared to hundreds of British and French tanks produced during the same period, which limited its overall influence. The A7V first entered combat in March 1918 during the German Spring Offensive, and its most famous appearance was at the Battle of Villers-Bretonneux in April 1918, where it took part in the world's first tank-versus-tank battle, engaging British Mark IV tanks in direct combat. Although the clash ended with mixed results, it highlighted both the potential and the limitations of armored vehicles in modern warfare. The A7Vs proved capable of inflicting damage when supported by infantry, but their mechanical unreliability, frequent breakdowns, and poor adaptability to battlefield conditions meant they could not be relied upon for sustained operations. Many were abandoned or captured, and the small production numbers meant they could never significantly alter the balance of power on the front. After Germany's defeat, nearly all A7Vs were scrapped, with only one surviving intact today, the famous Mephisto, captured by Australian troops and preserved in Brisbane, Australia, where it stands as the only surviving A7V in the world. Although the A7V was not a successful tank in practical terms, its development marked Germany's entry into the field of armored warfare and laid the groundwork for later tank concepts that would become crucial during the Second World War. It also underscored the lessons of mechanized warfare, that tanks required mobility, reliability, and numbers to be effective, not just heavy armor and firepower. For this reason, the A7V remains a fascinating chapter in military history, representing both the ingenuity and the limitations of early 20th century warfare technology, a steel giant whose symbolic importance far outweighed its battlefield performance.